I hereby call to order this special meeting, Committee of the Whole, for Monday, June 5th, 2023. The time is 8:01. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Aaron Stone,
Here.
John Cesaretti, Ann Hart,
Here.
Bonnie Kim,
Here.
Allison Pathless,
Here.
Amy Paling, Lisa Schneider-Fabes.
I seek a motion to approve the minutes of the May 15th, 2023 Committee of the Whole and Executive Session meetings.
Motion to approve the minutes of the May 15th, 2023 Committee of the Whole and Executive Session meetings.
May I have a second?
Second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Board members, are there any comments, errors, or omissions to the minutes? Let's see. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ann Hart,
Yes.
Bonnie Kim,
Yes.
Allison Pathless,
Yes.
Lisa Schneider-Fabes.
Yes.
Aaron Stone.
Yes, motion carries. We will begin with Strategy Committee. Mrs. Schneider-Fabes.
Good morning. I'm turning it over to Dr. Kramascoli to talk about SEL.
Thank you, and I'm pleased to introduce Kelly Jackson, who will provide the board with a review of our social emotional learning assessments. We administer these in fall and spring every year to students in kindergarten through 8th grade. So we're going to take a look at our growth, as well as some of the accomplishments in this area and some of our next steps maybe. Kelly?
All right. Good morning, everybody. This year saw the full implementation of the Tier 1 District 39 framework for social emotional learning, which is made up of the 5 CASEL competencies: relationship skills, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and responsible decision-making, as well as the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Teachers were given 3 to 5 learning objectives encompassing the various competencies that have been identified for each grade level, and resources were identified for direct instruction at each grade level, including those from Everyday Speech SEL and Responsive Classroom. As a part of our Tier 1 framework, 3 assessments were used to gather evidence of competency development across the grade levels. And these assessments were used to evaluate the effectiveness of our instruction and our resources as well. We also use this information to identify areas of focus for instruction across the grade levels and for individual classrooms. The K-4 levels, teachers administered the DESA, or Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment, and students participated in the SEL Web Assessment for their SEL competencies, also at K-4. At the 5-8 level, we gathered information about student SEL competencies and a supportive school environment using the Panorama MESH survey. MESH stands for Mindsets, Essential Skills, and Habits. All 3 assessments were given in the fall during October and again in the spring during May. This morning, we'll review the results over the course of this school year. The results from this year will be used to determine measures for the KPI under Goal 2, which indicates a strengths-based measure of student social emotional competency development will be used. This year was for baseline data, and that baseline data will help us set targets for the coming year. As mentioned, the DESA stands for Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment. This is a short 8-question questionnaire that teachers complete on each student in their class. If a student, based on that questionnaire, is identified as needing more support with SEL, the teacher then fills out a longer form to gather more information. These are the fall results from the DESA. They indicated that 38% of students fall in the strength category of performance, 59% in the typical range, and 3% as having social emotional needs. If students are in that need category, teacher teams will problem solve and identify interventions for those students. They also look at other evidence such as our new SEL web assessment and classroom evidence. Taking a look at the spring results, we see that 42% of students fall in the strength category of performance, 55% in the typical range, and 3% in needs. This shows that our strength category grew over the course of the year, and our typical category reduced. Needs stayed the same. We'll take a look at our SEL web data. The SEL web is a narrated assessment given online. There's 2 versions of it, the EE and the LE. EE is for early elementary, and LE is for late elementary. We give the EE to kindergarten through third graders and LE to fourth graders. The assessment measures social emotional competency development in 4 areas. In the EE assessment, it's emotion recognition, social perspective taking, social problem solving, and self-control. And the LE measures development in understanding others, social problem solving, self-control, and self-awareness. Results are divided into performance levels: above average, average, below average, and well below average. Taking a look at the fall for the EE, this is kindergarten through third graders, you can see 89% in the overall were in the average or above average categories. So if you take a look at the graph, it's the farthest left column. We combine the lightest green and the second lightest green, so the 15% and the 74% to get that 89% falling in average or above average categories. 9% fell in the below average category, which is kind of that darker green, and then 1% fell in the well below average, which is the darkest color green at the bottom of that graph. The other 4 columns break down the overall score into the individual competency areas. So from this administration of the SEL web, our early elementary students look to be strongest in the 3rd category, which would be social problem solving. It's the 4th graph over. That's from the fall. So then looking at the spring, 93% now in that farthest left graph. Overall, we're in the average or above average categories. 6% fell in the below average category and 1% still in the well below average category. These scores indicate growth overall for our students on the SEL web. Both social problem solving and emotion regulation were the strongest areas based on the other graphs there, with all 4 competency areas growing in the amount of students in average and above average over the course of the year. We'll take a look now at the LE portion, which is just for 4th graders. The real difference is the format of the test is a little bit more advanced for their age. It's less narrated, there's more words included. So overall for 4th graders, again in the far left column, you can see that the fall scores were 89%, with 10% in the below or well below average, or I'm sorry, 10% in the below average and 1% of students in 4th grade in the fall fell in the well below average category. From the fall results, we see that students in 4th grade were strongest in self-awareness, and understanding others was an area for growth, as they have kind of the greatest level of that kind of darker, not darkest green. So when we go to the spring, we see growth overall here as well. In the spring, it was 91% in average and above average, 8% in below average, and 1% in the well below average category. All 4 competency areas grew or stayed the same, and the area of understanding others over the course of the year improved. The Panorama Mesh survey is given to 5th through 8th graders in the fall and spring and has 2 components of this survey. There's one that is measuring student social emotional competencies, and the other part of the survey measures student environment and supports. The results from the Mesh help us to understand more about our middle school and junior high students' social emotional development, as well as giving us insights into their feelings of support and belonging as it relates to school climate. Areas targeted in the questionnaire include supportive relationships, self-management, social awareness, positive feelings, challenging feelings, emotion regulation, and in grades 6 through 8, social perspective taking. Areas targeted in the student supports component include school safety, sense of belonging, school climate, and valuing of school. Also included in the Mesh survey are 2 questions for each grade level about bullying at school, and we'll take a quick look at those as well. So these are the fall results again from the 5th graders. Mesh is divided into 3 through 5 and then 6 through 8. So our 5th graders stand alone in this part of the survey. The results from the fall show that the majority of areas fifth graders in the fall fell at above the 90th percentile nationally on the mesh. This is indicated by the little green dots to the right of the blue graphs. The one area that was at the 70th percentile nationally was supportive relationships. So we'll take a look at that as we look at the spring, excuse me. Now looking at the spring, all of the competency areas were at or above the 90th percentile for fifth graders. The column on the right shows the increase or decrease from the fall. So you can see kind of those little arrows and a number by it. The green arrows are increase, the red arrows are decrease. You can see that the area of supportive relationships showed the largest increase of 2 points. Questions in supportive relationships ask about having an adult at school students can count on, a family member or adults outside of school students can count on, and friends they can count on. The category of positive feelings had the largest decrease and was reduced by 4 points. You can see there. Questions in this category during the past week, how often did you feel happy, loved, excited, and safe? The category of happy was the most reduced at the time of the test or at the time of the assessment. It could be due to many external factors in the month of May. The spring results. Taking a look at those, we see that all of the competencies remain at the highest levels nationally. On the right, we also see the increase and decrease from, I'm at the fall results for 6th through 8th grade. This is the fall survey, I'm sorry about that. In the fall, 6th through 8th graders demonstrated strengths in all student competency members. They were all at the 80th to 99th percentile. Now we'll look at the spring. We see that all of the competencies continue to remain at the highest levels nationally. On the right, we see the increase and decrease, and many categories showed increases with positive feelings as the greatest increase. Questions again in this category, similar to 5th grade, ask how much in the past week students felt happy, excited, hopeful, loved, and safe. And the category of hopeful saw the greatest increase in this category. So an interesting contrast between the 5th graders and the 6th through 8th graders on that one. So our next look is at the 5th grade fall for the student supports and environment portion of the mesh. You'll see in the fall, results show that 5th grade students identify strengths in school safety and sense of belonging. These response ratings fell between the 80th and 90th percentile nationally. And then more specifically, school safety was at the 99th percentile and sense of belonging at the 90th percentile. 5th grade perceptions of school climate fell at 60th, and 5th grade valuing of school at the 70th percentile nationally. So those were kind of areas of focus for us. Looking at the spring on this same area, we see drops in all subcategories on the right-hand side. While school safety and sense of belonging dropped, they still remained at the highest percentile nationally. The category that dropped the most here is school climate. And valuing of school was also an area of concern. School climate questions include positive or negative energy of the school, fair or unfair rules, how much behavior of others hurts your learning, and how excited teachers are to teach your classes. The lowest score in this category was on the question where students were asked if the behavior of others hurts their own learning. It's important to point out that students who marked the behavior of others neither helps nor hurts my learning were not counted as positive responses, and that was a total of 41% of the responses for this question. So I think our kids were marking it like it doesn't affect me, probably at a pretty high rate there, and so that affected that score. Valuing of school questions include how interesting do you find the things you learn in school? How often do you use ideas from your school in your daily life? How important is it to do well in school? And how useful do you think school will be in the future? The interest in topics that they're learning in school and their use in daily life scored with the lowest percentage of positive responses here. And then school safety declined also in the fall, but it was still at the 90th percentile nationally. The question in this category that dropped the most was the question that states, how often are people disrespectful to others at your school? Sometimes, frequently, and always were counted as negative responses, and sometimes was 26% of that response. It's important here to note that the question stating how likely is it that someone from your school will bully you online and how often do students get in physical fights at your school received 88% favorable responses. That means it's unlikely that it's going to happen at an 88% favorable rate. And if a student is bullied another question, if a student is bullied at school, how difficult is it for them to get help from an adult? That received an 80% favorable response rate, meaning that it's not difficult. The final question, how often do you worry about violence at your school, received a 90% favorable rating, meaning that our students are not generally worried about violence happening at our school. So an interesting thing to pull out of that is that the disrespect is what got the most unfavorable responses. We'll peruse the 6th through 8th grade fall on this same student supports and environment portion of the survey. Responses here, we're a strength in school safety in the fall, between the 80th and 99th percentile. And sense of belonging was an area of focus, falling at the 50th percentile. School climate was at the 40th percentile, and valuing of school fell at the 30th percentile. You can see that's the orange dot there. As you know, the category of sense of belonging has been a focus for the 5-8 campus throughout the year and continues to be an important part of our goal 2 under the strategic plan. We will share some of the upcoming results from that work that has been done this year, and we are awaiting, and some things that are awaiting implementation for next year. Taking a look at spring, we have a couple areas of concern and a little bit of celebration as well. So for 6th through 8th grade, school climate dropped and continues to be in a low percentile. And while valuing of school increased, it also continues to be in a low category based on national percentiles. School climate includes question about positive or negative energy of the school, fair and unfair rules, behavior of others hurting your learning, and how excited teachers are to teach your classes. Similar to the 5th graders, lowest scores in this category were in the area of behavior of others hurting your own learning. And again, it was that neither helps nor hurts my learning. Others' behavior, they marked 40% of the responses for that. So that kind of played into that negative percentile there. Valuing of school questions include how interesting do you find things in school, how often do you use things in your daily life, how important it is to do well in school, and how useful do you think school will be in the future. In the area of use of daily life, 39% of students marked sometimes, so meaning sometimes I use this in my daily life, or I think I could use this in my daily life. And then the other low scoring area was interest of things learned in school. So 32% of students marked sometimes in that. So I think that gives us good information as we talk with our staff about it. How do we connect the learning that students are doing in school to their daily life and that application? And also, how do we play on student interests and student kind of preferred things as we're teaching some of the non-preferred things in order to balance that out and give them that interest level. If you take a look at sense of belonging, you'll see that in the fall, it was at the 50th percentile nationally, and now we have raised 1 point, woo! But that actually brings us up to the 60th percentile nationally. So that's a little area of celebration. So areas and sense of belonging that increased in this question were about finding adult connections at the school and how much you matter to others in the school. So those were marked more positively than they were in the fall. The only area that decreased in sense of belonging was how much respect students felt from other students at school. So again, there's a little thread of disrespect from others that's kind of flowing through this. So, and it's peer disrespect. We continue to focus on sense of belonging. We'll target areas of school climate and valuing of school in the coming year. Now we'll take a look at those other additional questions, which were the bullying questions. So this is 5th grade in the fall. It was at an 85% favorable in the fall, and you can see that's a pretty big jump from historical patterns. It was 81, 80, 77, and then 85. So last spring was at 77%. So taking a look at this spring, we're back down to 77%. When we took a look at this, it was interesting to us to see such a drop from the spring or from the fall to the spring. And we kind of looked at the the questions and how they're worded. Have you been bullied at school? How often are students at your school bullied? And the biggest drop was in that how often are students at your school bullied? And it's really a perception category. So it doesn't really match what we are actually seeing in our office and through bullying reports and what have you. So, and Kristen will be giving her bullying report, I think, next week. So you'll see that. So this is an interesting question for us. And so we continue to kind of think about what is the value of these questions and are they valuable? Or is this more of a perception that students think that people are bullied, but they may not really be truly bullied? I think there's also confusion with what the term bullying actually means for students. A lot of social conflict happens at middle school and junior high, and we know that, but it's not necessarily rising to the level of bullying that we might, that we know as bullying, but students may not perceive it as bullying. 6th through 8th grade also was at 74% in the fall, which was the same as last spring. And then there was a drop to 69%. And again, that drop is in that how often are students bullied at your school? So again, some more work to be done in looking more deeply at those questions and the value of those questions and seeing if there might be something better that's gauging, that's more in line with what we're seeing in the office from that. So thinking ahead, we have made some movement this year and are looking forward to using the data gathered from these assessments to set our targets for growth, specifically with our KPIs and as well with our SEL team that looks at this data more in depth. A few changes we're excited about for the fall is first having the data from these assessments now in EduClimber, which is our data warehouse. It houses all of our academic data, attendance data, and also helps us keep track of interventions for students. Now we will be able to see the academic data and the attendance data and our SEL data side by side. So it'll be great for problem-solving meetings and conversations about students and their SEL needs. Thinking about interventions, we also, our SEL team has been working throughout the year to create a structure for tiered interventions as a part of our MTSS work. And so summer work will be done this year on resources and aligning resources with grade levels, and also identifying some processes for how to have those problem-solving conversations. Finally, the SEL group has been looking at specifically with that sense of belonging, what do we do in the classroom? How can we target that in the classroom? And we've identified some specific curricular resources for teachers that specifically target sense of belonging. And we're working on a plan to begin to trial some of those resources in the fall with hopeful eventual adoption in the coming year. So we look to measure that growth and hopefully it has a positive effect on our students. And it's really adapted to their grade level. I think what we found with some other programs is that the 6th through 8th graders kind of think it's cheesy. So we're hoping that this curriculum is a lot more beneficial for our kids at really probing a little bit more deeply into what's going on with them. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We have part of our goal too is the teacher survey. We give a teacher survey at the beginning of the year that encompasses goals 2, 3, and 4. And then we just recently re-administered that. So I wanted to review a little bit of the data that came out of that goal area. So the first question was specific to SEL in your district or school, how valuable are SEL professional development opportunities? You'll see in the fall, 49.6% were quite valuable or somewhat valuable. And in the spring, we saw an increase in somewhat valuable, but a little decrease in the overall. How often do your social emotional SEL learning professional development opportunities help you explore new ideas? This is in the fall, we had 34.6%, and in the spring, we had 32.3%. And I'm looking at this, and it doesn't look like I copied the right graphs on there. So I will go back and take a look at this, but we had an increase in almost all the time and an increase in sometimes from the fall. How relevant have your social emotional learning professional development opportunities been to the content you teach? Again, it's dipped a little bit in the spring because I think over the course of the year, as we have dug in, people have become more cognizant of what the social emotional PD opportunities are and how they might be able to relate those to their content, and have been more eager to have some of that information in their content. These are the two that really are part of our KPI, is preparedness and confidence. So this is our preparedness. How prepared do you feel when teaching SEL skills as the primary lesson or embedded in instruction? In the fall, you see 32, it's the upper left-hand one, quite prepared and extremely prepared make up about 46.9%. And in the spring, you see 45.2 and 12.9% is 58.1% are feeling quite prepared or extremely prepared. So there was a decrease in slightly and not at all overall. So I think those are really good at telling us that our teachers are feeling increasingly prepared. And then confidence also increased from fall, which was quite confident and extremely confident, was 55.8%, and then 58.1% in the spring. And there was, again, a decrease in slightly and not at all on this graph. So they're increasing in confidence as well as preparedness. General trends from spring indicate that there are better curricular supports. Excuse me, sorry, I skipped this slide. How much time per week are you spending instructing as the primary goal of the lesson or embedded instruction, the social emotional skills? We see a decrease as we go to the spring. In the fall, I think people started off and it was, we're doing once or more a week and really getting into it. And then as we went to the spring, we went down to 67.7 teaching once or more a week. And we would hope that that would stay more consistent throughout the year and even increase to at least 2 times a week. So our final question on this survey was about professional development topics that we would like to see. In general trends, indicate that there are better curricular supports and more support with embedding SEL instruction needed at 5 through 8, which, as I mentioned before, is something that our team is working on. And this will be an area of focus for the coming year. At elementary, it seems like staff would also like more support with understanding how to better integrate that SEL. So we've gone from I understand how to teach a lesson on self-awareness to now where does that show up in my curriculum in my everyday lesson? And they're also looking at how to do better with interventions at a tier 2 and tier 3 level. So again, those are things that our committee is working on and hoping to implement in the fall and throughout the coming year. I'm confident we will be able to address these needs as we move forward. That's all I've got. Sorry, that was kind of long-winded.
Thank you so much for that report. Thank you.
Tilt the microphone so it's pointing at your mouth. It usually works.
Oh,
But there you go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Just as for the last couple of years, I continue to be concerned about the sense of belonging and school climate for our middle and junior high students. And I understand that you're working on curriculum to address that. Do you think that the lunchtime interest groups or the clubs has made an impact on that? I mean, it seems like it hasn't from the numbers, but maybe you have a better perspective on that.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes what we're dealing with is anecdotally from students, I'm hearing that it's making an impact for them. I think that I don't know that the survey really gets to that part of it. And I think what we might look to doing in future years is asking more open-ended questions to the kids, maybe integrating a question about what has helped you feel like you belong at school or what has hindered you from feeling like you belong at school, because this is not giving us really the information that we need to target specifically that sense of belonging. I think also with the valuing of school is another area where it's asking kind of broad questions, and I don't know that it's getting at what the heart of the situation is, if that's really truly what's going on, or if they're just answering the questions quickly and not thinking as deeply about them. So we need to dig in a little bit more.
Are the questions given to you by the, like DESA and MESH?
Yeah, it's all standardized as a part of their assessments.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like curious as to like why students in other jurisdictions are able to answer those questions. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah.
I just want to follow up on the additional questions, the ones in the 5.8 on bullying. Is it considered additional questions because we write them?
It's not a part, so the way that it's set up is you elect which categories you want, but that's not, bullying is not a separate category for the survey. You can add those questions in. So they're just additional questions that we add in as a part of the survey.
But they're not our questions.
They're not, we didn't make up
We
the
elect
questions.
to administer the questions. They're not part of one of the other subcategories.
Yes.
So, and going on the SEL 5.8, right? I mean, I've had middle schoolers and they make fun of SEL education, but it feels like, given the results, it's needed.
Yes, definitely.
So how do you deal with that?
I think that's where we're looking at some different curricular supports. What we're looking at is more of it's a curriculum where it has kind of a set lesson pattern, but the lessons are not as canned as maybe when we used to use Second Step. It was kind of, here's your binder, here's your lesson, go teach your lesson, show this video, what have you. These lessons are not, they're not as scripted, if you will. So and they also offer some really probing questions that teachers can pick and choose from to kind of offer a more authentic conversation in class. I think our kids get hung up on, here's the video and I know all the right answers. And it's hard for our teachers to think about how am I going to use these questions, or how do I develop questions even that target these areas that our kids need. So what we're looking at, the curriculum that we're looking at really has those resources where teachers can kind of preview and look at, okay, my kids are really struggling in this area overall. So I'm going to pull some of these questions and just put them up on a slideshow and have one question up to use for a conversation one day in class. And all it takes sometimes is just one question that really probes into it, and you can go at a deeper level, and kids are really starting to share and open up. Another thing that we've been doing specifically at Highcrest that I think we want to kind of grow is using our social workers in a different way, where we're doing a lot of co-teaching in the classroom, where teachers will say to our social workers, hey, I have a group of kids that's really struggling in this area. Can we team together and do kind of a series of lessons where we do some of these circle discussions, or we have our class kind of having more authentic conversations about what they're dealing with. And that's been really successful at Highcrest. We've done some professional development around that for the whole 5.8 campus. We did that in March at our 5.8 day, and are hoping to grow that as we look to the future, where we can have some more mental health professionals teaming with our gen ed teachers to help maneuver around some of the conflicts that are happening in this school.
It's working? Yeah, okay. Yes. All right. I just had a clarification question for myself. The teacher survey, was that K through 8?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's everybody.
Okay. I would just be curious if the differences between elementary and some of the, the junior high.
Yeah, and we can break that down. It was specifically broken down on the feedback question and the open-ended question at the end, but we can break that down too and kind of see some comparison.
Because, I mean, it seems like they feel prepared and confident, but the value or the relevancy isn't there, and I just wonder if that's the same. If maybe it is more valuable and relevant at the younger levels, or earlier education than older.
And that was really some of the feedback about professional development kind of lent into that. So it was, we have our lessons, at the elementary level, I know how to do that. I want to look at the embeddedness. At 5.8, it was, we need something better to target some of these things. So that's why exactly we're looking at that. And I think they want the value to be there. I think the teachers do value it. It's just how to kind of get to that part for their kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this is not a question, it's just the valuing of school surprises me, how low that is, and you have to wonder if that score was to go up or increase, does that correlate with some other scores? If you value why you're there and what you're gaining from it,
Right.
do you then show more respect to peers and teachers? And it'd be interesting to watch that one and if it helps with other scores along the way.
I think they all
Yeah.
do kind of overlap for sure. Yeah.
But definitely stands out.
So given all that data, what are your key takeaways, right? If you had to boil down kind of the biggest areas of focus here.
Yeah, I think that the sense of belonging, again, continues. I think we want to really dig into some of those areas. Like I said, there's kind of this thread of like peer disrespect that's going through a lot of that data. So how do we target that and improve that area of the school climate? I think that would play into some of that valuing of school as well. And I think under the valuing of school, talking about with our teachers, how do we help students see kind of that real life application of what they're learning more clearly, build those bridges for them? I think that's important to do. Thank you, guys.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to facility development items. Mrs. Kim?
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to our business manager, Mr. Boltmeyer.
All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mackenzie Playground donation agreement. So the Mackenzie PTA has raised a pretty significant amount of money to replace a playground right adjacent to their blacktop area. Following the process we've used for recent playgrounds at Central and at Ramona, when those projects are ready to happen, the board will enter a donation agreement with the specific PTA. The reason for this is even though the PTAs are funding the project, once the project is done and they've paid for it, this is just a recognition that then the equipment and everything involved in that transfers to the district, and the district retains the legal rights going forward. So we'll have that agreement for board approval next Monday. I just wanted to show a couple of computerized renderings of the new playground. Compared to what we have now, probably the couple of biggest features is a pour-in-place surface, which is kind of like a rubbery, smooth surface that just allows for more accessibility. And then in this particular rendering, if you look more towards the left side, there's kind of an oval-looking piece of equipment, which the Mackenzie PTA was intentional about purchasing. It would allow a student in a wheelchair to roll up on there and be on a piece of equipment with their other students and be able to do that in a safe manner. And then if we scroll down, this is just the same thing with a different look. So that's all I have for the Mackenzie donation agreement. And then the next item is for the items that I placed on the table for each board member. Twice a year, one of the things that we look at is our 5-year capital project summary. And the information on here isn't new compared to anything we've previously talked about. Other than I just wanted to have we review this in December each year when we're doing the 5-year projections, and we also look at it in June. Thanks to the board, we have the design authorization to proceed with the WJH's roof work for summer of 2024. So I'll answer any questions if anybody has anything, but the composition of projects, the stuff that's already been board approved, we've talked about many times. Last month, the items in yellow represent the roof that we're going to work towards for next summer. And then there's 3 other projects out there for the remaining years within this 5-year window.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? I just want to say that the Mackenzie playground, I mean, first of all, it's amazing that the parents were able to raise this much money, and it looks so beautiful. I mean, for you had Mackenzie kids too, like it's pretty exciting to think about, the change that's going to happen and, how gorgeous it is. Is that the color that it's going to be? That light blue?
That I don't know. That was the rendering when we were going several months ago when they were kind of having me take a look at the documents from the vendor. I had asked if there was a rendering just because I knew it would be helpful at some point. Usually they're pretty close. Like if they were going to do a bright red, usually they would probably try and show that, but I don't know for sure that that's the exact colors.
Well, I can't wait to try it out, so I'll let you know how it is. Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
I was just curious when installation is planned.
So our director of facilities has been in touch with them and have also been in touch with Dana, the principal at Mackenzie, and it sounds like the Monday after school is out, so it would be a week from today, they'll start putting up the fencing around the site so the site is secure, because there will be people in the community, there will be some park district programming and summer school programming at Mackenzie, and then they'll get going shortly thereafter. So and I think the total, like assuming you had great weather, I think taking things out, putting down the new port and play and installing the equipment, it's probably like 3-ish weeks, maybe pushing 4. So I would suspect they'll be done before the summer's out, and that the fence will be removed, and that's kind of what would have been explained to me on the front end.
I think
That's
that's
it?
it for facility development.
We will continue with school finance. Mr. Cesaretti is not here. If he were, I think he'd probably turn it over to Mr. Boltmeyer, so that's what I'll do.
All right. So the next item that I left for the board, so the next item in the packet was a 3-page document. That is the tentative budget for WICSI, our joint agreement with the Avoca School District. And even though there's 3 pages, really the page I would look at is in the kind of the top left corner where it has the financial, the only cells that have any dollar amounts attached to them. So the budget for WICSI is fairly straightforward each year. The total revenues in this document are $213,828. They're set to be equal to the expenditures. Everything that kind of flows through this organization is kind of in and out. The revenues and expenditures are going to equal each other at this point. There's no fund balance. However, because it is a joint agreement, it has its own legal budget, it's its own entity, it has its own financial statements which get audited, and everything gets approved in the same manner that the District 39 financial statements do as well. So there's really not a lot to it. If anybody has any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, I can move on to District 39 budget.
Does anyone have any questions?
So then the next document that I have in the board members packet is, this is the tentative budget for fiscal year 24 for the District 39. This is the numbers in here are the exact same that we reviewed in much more detail in the month of May. I just wanted to share this with the board because next Monday, one of the procedural steps in approving a budget each year is that at a board meeting, the board will take formal action and vote to approve or adopt a tentative budget, which would occur next Monday. In addition to that, we'll be setting a public hearing date for our August board meeting. And then within usually a week or two of that June 12th meeting, we will publish notice in a local paper, providing the required at least 30 days notice for holding that tentative budget public hearing. So similar to what we talked about in May, the operating funds, which is where we always kind of gravitate our attention to, which is the first page in this document. The top line surplus was 4.3 million, but then after we account for that transfers out and other uses, which is construction and some debt service payments, we're down to a net surplus of 279,000. And then that gets us to the ultimate bottom line of 29.8 million in fund balance, or right at about 42%. It's kind of our projection right now looking. And as we work our way through the summer, as has been the case, there will be many changes coming back to that August, I think it's 14th Finance Committee meeting, at which point we'll have an updated detailed budget document. And then I'll provide like a one-page summary that I can show everyone what were the changes by line item from the spring tentative budget to that final budget. So that process is very similar to one we've used in the past. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Anyone have any questions? Okay.
So the last document that I left for board members is just try to summarize. Each year, there's always certain things that board just has to do as a matter of process. So there's 4 items on here, and I'll just run through each one. The first item is renewing the board approving and renewing the treasurer's bond. So each year, the district, since I'm the District 39 treasurer, the district will take out a treasurer's bond on me. That gets renewed for a 1-year period. So that will be up for approval next Monday night. The next item is a resolution related to interfund transfers from the operations and maintenance fund to the capital projects fund. Just as a refresher, ISB requires us to pay for construction projects out of capital projects. Capital projects doesn't have its own designated incomes like revenue stream other than a transfer or a potential bond issuance from the operation and maintenance fund. So for next year, the funding source will be a transfer of 2.86 million from O&M to capital projects. The resolution will cover that transfer. The third item is an interfund loan. So in the past, just as a precautionary measure, we've had the board provide authority to allow us to make an interfund loan on a temporary basis from the educational fund to the operation and maintenance fund. As I look at the fiscal year 24, this is a precautionary measure. I don't think it's likely, but you never know what could happen. And the reason that it even can kind of come up sometimes with O&M is that since we're property tax heavy, if we were to have our property taxes be delayed a little bit, most of the transfers in a given year to cover construction from O&M to capital projects tend to occur early in the year as we're wrapping up that summer construction, making those payments to contractors. So that's the reason for that. And then the very last item is a resolution for the payment of accounts payable invoices during the summer. Since we don't have any board meetings between June 12th and August 28th, this is a resolution that we do every summer, and as do other school districts. It just allows the business office to keep up on invoices as they come in, make payments in a timely basis, be a good business partner, and then similar to what we do every month, we'll have the full list of checks that we wrote over the summer, and we'll bring them for formal board approval on August 28th. If anybody has any questions about any of those 4 items, just let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Board members, are there any questions, comments? Okay, thank you. This would be the opportunity for public to address the board. I don't see any public, so we will move on. We have an action item about the proposal for the Illinois Association of School Boards resolution. Before we move and second that, do any board members have any questions or discussion they want to have about that? Okay. I seek a motion to approve the proposal to the Illinois Association of School Boards Resolutions Committee as presented.
Motion to approve the proposal to the Illinois Association of School Boards Resolutions Committee as presented.
May I have a second? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ann Hart,
Yes?
Bonnie Kim,
Yes.
Allison Pathless,
Yes.
Lisa Schneider-Fabes, Aaron Stone.
Yes. Motion carries. Is there any old business? Any new business? Okay. Then I seek a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss placement of students in special education / specific student matters and specific personnel.
Motion to move to executive session to discuss the placement of individual students in special education, specific student matters, and specific personnel.
May I have a second?
Second.
Motion having been made and seconded, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ann Hart,
Yes?
Bonnie Kim,
Yes.
Allison Pathless,
Yes.
Lisa Schneider-Fabes,
Yes.
Aaron Stone.
Yes. Motion carries. We are now adjourned to executive session and the time is 8:52.